Hello, in this video you will learn attacking lines against the Philidor's defense when playing aggressive e4. e4 pawn to e5. Play knight to f3 attacking this pawn. There are several ways to defend this pawn. If black chooses to play pawn to d6, he has formed the base for the Philidor's defense. Continue with d4. Black may decline by playing knight to d7. Go ahead with bishop to c4. The main motive of bishop to c4 is to position the bishop to attack f7 and vacating f1 for king to castle fast. In just few moves, white is ready to castle king to safety. Bishops are well active compared to black's bishops. Development is in ratio of 75% to 25%. For simplified studies, let's consider three prospective responses for black, which include bishop to e7, pawn to h6, and even knight on g to f6. You see, knight on g to f6 attracts this variation. After pawn takes, if knight takes the knight on e5. If pawn takes, there is a bishop sacrifice by taking the pawn on f7 with check. If king takes the bishop, then the queen is gone. In this position, after bishop took the pawn, king can still stay to defend the queen. So queen takes queen, king takes the queen. In few calculations, you will discover that white is up a pawn. Secondly, the king has lost the right to castle. We've just considered knight moving to f6. Let's take a look at bishop to e7 this time around. There is pawn takes on e5, pawn takes on e5, queen to d5. This is similar to the Scotch gambit trap I showed on this channel. However, what is the continuation from here? If knight goes to h6 trying to defend the pawn on f7, there is bishop takes the knight instantly. Once pawn takes the bishop, queen takes the pawn is checkmate. In this position, after bishop takes the knight, if black chooses not to take the bishop right away and castle the king to safety, we can simply drop the bishop back to e3. Then we can find a way to win this game with an extra piece advantage. In this position, if pawn did not take pawn and knight takes pawn instead, then knight takes the knight on e5. If pawn takes, queen to h5 is an aggressive way to continue. This pawn is now pinned to the king. This pawn on e5 is under attack from the queen. How do you continue here? Black would blunder if he continues with bishop to e6, because bishop takes bishop wins an extra piece also. So if we look at a move like pawn to g6 attacking the queen, queen can simply take the pawn in the center, and this diagonal onward is now weak towards the rook. So a move like this might come up in the future just to block the relationship between the queen and the rook. White can go ahead to castle and enjoy the game from here. Since we are considering common mistakes and many mistakes black can make to go wrong in this position as black player, we should not forget that there's a move like this, knight moving over to e7. This is actually a poor continuation. That is why I did not include it among the major bad continuations, because this is way too bad. How do we punish this? A way to punish this particular move as white is to discover knight to g5. Knight to g5 is an aggressive way to continue because this knight now joined forces with the bishop to attack this square f7. So black will try to find every possible means to defend against the threat of checkmate, because if bishop takes that pawn on f7, it is checkmate. So black may try an idea with pawn to d5. Go with queen to h5, increasing pressure to make checkmate on f7 since the queen is now on this diagonal. g6 is the likely move to be played. Just play queen to f7, attacking that same square again. So f5 may come up. Knight to e6 is simply winning. In this place, black can go ahead to resign because the knight on e6 now attacks the queen and the queen has no escape squares. We have looked at replies, which include bishop moving over to e7. We have looked at replies with knight to f6. In this position, we're going to look at h6 instead. How can we continue here with h6? Go ahead with pawn takes pawn. If pawn takes the pawn on e5, we can play a spectacular sacrifice, an unexpected sacrifice if bishop takes the pawn on f7 with check. It is likely for beginners to take this bishop right away. Then we can go on with knight takes the pawn on e5 with check again to the king. In this case, if black takes the knight in a hurry, then queen takes queen is simply winning for white. In this position, let's analyze some responses that does not include knight takes knight. That includes king going to the light squares. Let's look at this first light square, king going to e8 back. Then we can unleash queen to h5 check to the king. If black blocks with this pawn, queen takes, then the attack can continue from here. So in case black did not block with the pawn, black chooses to run away with the king instead right away, then queen to f7 check comes in first. After the king move, knight to c4 check, king to c5, queen to d5 check, king to b4, a3 check, king to a4. Now b3 is checkmate. In this position, after the king had moved to e8, queen stormed in. If the king moves here, there is still another variation that wins for white. Aside queen going to f7 with check, there is still a spectacular knight move to g6 check, king to e8, because if the king comes down, there are still ways to continue from here. There is still queen to f5 check, there's also queen to this particular square check, and so many others. Let's consider king going back after this knight check. King goes back, then knight takes, open a discovered attack on the king. If he blocks with the pawn, we take, king moves, then this happens, and black is losing a lot of materials here, exposing the king, and many other factors can come into play. After knight took the pawn, attacking the king, we just explore variations connected to king going over to e8. Let's talk about king going to e6 this time. Instead of using this square, h5, we can go ahead to use queen to d5. We check to the king, pushing the king back to e7, queen to f7 check, king d6, knight to c4 check. We have seen a variation where the king goes to a square like this and got checkmated around e4. So let's say king goes to c6, then queen comes in back to d5 is checkmate. With the last analysis, king went to the light squares and there were issues, which helps white to win. Let's look at where king goes to the dark squares. Let's consider moving to e7 right away. You should be able to spot knight to g6 check, which attacks the king and the rook on the spot. In this case, black will eventually go into the light squares, either here or even this square, and the continuation will be deadly against black. Aside going to e7, let's consider moving to f6 then. We can simply continue with queen to d5, with the attention on the f7 square, trying to harass the king further. This is what's going to happen. Most of the beginners will love to activate their pieces with tempo. If they do not carefully calculate this, they may run into trouble. One of those tempo moves will be bishop to b4 check. And this is where problems start, because the bishop can simply be attacked with pawn to c3, attacking that bishop. Now black is in more trouble. The king is exposed, the bishop is under attack. What to do? He may find knight to e7, try to attack the queen with tempo, so if the queen is saved, he can save the bishop or pick up the knight. In this case, we can launch successful attacks that lead to a king hunt, where queen to f7 check comes up. If king takes the knight, then bishop moves over to f4, attack the king. The king can only save itself by running away to this square by taking this pawn on e4. Unleash knight to d2 check. If king to d3, queen to c4 check. If king to c2, now pawn takes the bishop on b4 with tempo and check to the king. King takes the pawn on b2 in sort of safety. Queen to b3 check. King takes the rook on e1, then king to e2 is checkmate. These are ideas I can share with you on how to deal with the Philidor's defense. You can take this and practice more, increase your idea and scope on how to play against Philidor defense in your own game. Thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed this content, do not forget to subscribe to my channel for more, like this video and share to your friends. See you in more videos like this on this channel. Till then, take care.